This past October, I spent a portion of my time catching up on horror movies that I had been meaning to watch, as well as revisiting some of my personal favorites. The horror movie genre as of recently has seen a bit of a resurgence as of late, and it felt really refreshing to get films like Midsommar or Get Out, and more recently films like The Barbarian or Talk to Me, just to name a few. After years of films that rely on more cliches and tropes rather than telling an intriguing story, there's a lot of hope in the genre for new films coming out. And catching up on these films got me thinking about the genre as a whole, and how the different subgenres of it all rely on pushing the limits of what can be shown in order to capitalize on human fear, thus creating horror. Some examples of films like this are Cube, which capitalize on claustrophobia or the fear of confined spaces. The Blair Witch Project utilizes autophobia or the fear of isolation, and It Follows uses scopophobia or the fear of being watched and followed. Now, not every horror film needs to take advantage of this formula in order to be scary. However, it is one of the ways that a horror movie can be structured. One of the things that makes a film of the genre scary is what they show the viewer. Things like body horror, gore, and gross imagery, or even just darker themes can be the building blocks to scaring viewers, or at the very least, making them uncomfortable. That's why I feel that horror movies work best when they have an R rating. It gives the people behind the film more to work with, rather than trying to scare viewers and meet restrictions in order to get a PG-13 rating. That's not to say there aren't any good PG-13 horror movies out there. I mean, movies like Split or A Quiet Place are rare examples. These are films which are incredibly popular and scary to a lot of people, but it still manages to keep a PG-13 rating. However, with every good PG-13 horror film like A Quiet Place, you have a dozen horror movies like Five Nights at Freddy's. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go ahead and review the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Now, to the maybe 1% of people watching this who don't know what Five Nights at Freddy's, or the commonly shortened down version FNAF is, and just woke up from a 10-year-long comatose, FNAF is a horror franchise starting with an indie game created in August 2014 by one Scott Cawthon. While not his first venture into game creation, FNAF would be his first game to create financial success and spawn not one, not two, but 9 sequels, not including spin-offs. In just a short amount of time, FNAF would become one of the most recognizable horror IPs in the past decade, gaining enough popularity to rival horror Let's Play juggernauts like Amnesia or Slender, becoming a smash hit for neurodivergent tweens across the world. I should know, I was one of those tweens. For better or for worse, FNAF would forever change the landscape of the horror genre in video games. Now, while the FNAF series is a far cry from what it was nearly a decade ago, it's still very popular to this day, with the community remaining strong with fan projects, animations, and more recently, analog horror. So it should really be no surprise that just like any other horror IP, FNAF would have its own movie adaptation.
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, where fantasy and fun come to life. Hit it.
Damn it, I just had this TV fixed. So if you weren't there to see it, allow me to give you a brief rundown of what happened. In March of 2015, the third installment of FNAF was released, and it was up there with one of the most hyped up games of that year.
This might be the most hyped game in the history of gaming.
Literally everyone across schools and across the internet were making different speculations for what this game would be, and even I was drawing different characters for what this third game would have. I'm not going to be showing you these drawings. There's no way you could even waterboard me into showing you these drawings. But it goes to show how excited people were for this game. And when the game did eventually come out, fans were under the impression that this would be the final game in the series. And it was. Ignore the 17 games that came out after this. While all of this was happening, the movie adaptation for FNAF was going through multiple production changes. Being announced in April 2015, the film was originally going to be produced by Warner Brothers, and directed and co-written by Gil Kenan, who is most well known for directing Monster House. So alright, that's some pretty good names for this movie, don't you think? Both Warner Brothers and Kenan dropped out of the project after multiple production delays. It's alright though, because in 2017, 2 years after the initial announcement, Blumhouse Productions picked up the project and was set to be directed and co-written by Chris Columbus. This was big news. Columbus was a prolific movie director who directed classics such as the Home Alone films, the Harry Potter films, and Pixels. It really felt like the film was making good progress. Columbus would also drop out of the project. After that, it would be radio silence about the production of this film, and it wouldn't be until late 2022 that production for the movie began to get more traction. Emma Tammy would join the project as the replacement for Columbus, and filming would officially begin in February of 2023. It's no secret that production of this film was a total mess, starting from an announcement in 2015 and taking over 8 years to release. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie was released October 27th, 2023, to a negative response from critics and an overwhelmingly positive response from the fans. Creator of FNAF and professional bigot Scott Cawthon has gone on record saying that the movie is quote-unquote for the fans, and after watching the film, it's obvious that the film is indeed made for fans who watch about 3 movies a year. See, the main issue that this movie faces is that because it's made with fans in mind and not the general audience, it relies on you as the viewer already knowing what's happening in the story. It assumes you know the lore to the games. This is a problem that the Mario movie faces as well. Both movies are made with fans and not general audience in mind. So the aspects of what makes a movie enjoyable are lost and instead focused on stockpiling the film with references and fan service. I think the only way for me to show you what I mean is to go through this movie and dissect it. So without further ado, here's...
Whoa, nice graphics!
Five Nights at Freddy's opens by introducing us to this guy, who's trying to escape from his work post as a night guard for Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. As it turns out, the animatronic robots are quirky at night, and thus are trying to kill the security guard. He's eventually caught and placed in a torture device. In the games, it's implied by your tutorial that the animatronics...
They'll probably try to forcefully stuff you inside a Freddy Fazbear suit.
But knowing the context of lore, this is most likely a lie, and the animatronics just kill you outright. I'm fine with the movie creating its own lore and adding things that are exclusive to it, but they need to have a reason to exist. This machine isn't given a purpose and is instead only there so that it can create a brutal death for one of these characters. I want to say that this is similar to the Scooper from Sister Location, but at least in that game there was a reason for its existence and why it was at the establishment to begin with.
I'm broken. I can't be fixed. I'm going to be taken to the scooping room soon.
With this, I don't understand why they would have this torture machine just in the middle of like a pizzeria. Maybe this was just how they punished employees back then who asked for a raise, I don't know.
Mr. Krabs, can I have a raise?
No.
Anyway, the guard is killed off screen because, say it with me now, PG-13! And we're introduced to our main character, Mike Schmidt, played by the internet's favorite heartthrob white guy, Josh Hutcherson.
The last time I was in an arena full of kids, they were all trying to kill me.
And I kid you not when I say this, Mike is one of the most uninteresting, cookie-cutter, Raisin Bran Flakes protagonist I have ever seen in a horror movie. After he gets his little sister named Abby, who is played by Piper Rubio, ready for school, we learn that he's a mall security guard who ends up losing his job because he Roman Reigns speared a dad who he thought was kidnapping a kid. We later find out that this outburst is a cause of his trauma that he incurred when witnessing the kidnapping of his own brother as a kid. Something that he dreams about every night. If you forget about this detail, don't worry, the film is going to remind you many, many times. After Mike beats this guy to death most likely, he meets with his career counselor, Steve Raglan, played by Matthew Lillard, who is most famous for his role as Stu in the Scream franchise, and a character from this movie about a talking dog or something, I don't know. Steve tells Mike that because of his incident at the mall and his past incompliance with keeping a job for more than a month, it's going to be unlikely that he will get new work.
I'm going to be brutally honest with you here, Mike. Given your track record, your options are going to be extremely limited.
Mike explains how he's desperate for work, and Steve tells him that despite his need, it's not that easy. So, hearing this, Mike decides to get up and leave. And all of a sudden, Steve has work for him. He offers Mike a security guard position at an abandoned pizzeria that was once popular in the 80s. This, of course, being Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And despite saying that he's desperate for work, he turns it down because
I can't do nights.
And just like that, the movie ends. It's kind of a weird decision to end the movie like that, but, you know, movies are subjective, so... Mike arrives home and we learn that he has a babysitter for Abby when he's gone, which kind of defeats the purpose of him saying that he can't do night shifts, especially considering this character has no problem making herself comfortable in his home. Like, I don't get why you can't just pay her to look after Abby overnight while working.
I wish someone would buy me a ring.
Oh, I get why. That's not a human. Mike and Abby have a little back and forth before we learn that Abby has an imaginary friend. I bring this up because the movie tries really hard to make us think that Abby is strange or an outcast, when the only quote-unquote strange thing she does is that she draws a lot, has an imaginary friend, and prefers to sit alone from other kids while at school. So she's a kid. One of my main issues with this is that the traits she possesses are not uncommon from kids her age, especially neurodivergent kids. So when the movie tries to make this story narrative that she's weird or strange, it's nonsensical at best and offensive at worst. Now, considering this movie was co-written by Scott Cawthon, I wouldn't be too shocked if that's what it was going for.
My friend says you're an idiot.
At least I'm real.
Mike goes to sleep, and we see the dream I mentioned earlier with his brother being kidnapped right in front of him. This dream sequence informs us our basic character arc for Mike, that being coping with the trauma of witnessing his own brother be taken away from him. It's implied that his parents are also most likely dead. The movie never really explains how or why they died, they're just non-existent from the story, and the characters reference them like they're not alive anymore. This could have easily been explained by saying something like how the parents couldn't cope with the loss of their child, so they either died of heartbreak or by their own hands. The movie does touch later on in the film about the whereabouts of their parents, but it's in such a vague manner that you still have no idea what even happened. This isn't really something that bothers me too much with the film, it's just something I find pretty strange considering the whole story about family importance and everything. Well, regardless, because we have this plot, Mike is Abby's guardian and caretaker. I think the only way you can make this A plot more cliche is by adding an antagonistic family member who wants custody of Abby. But thank God we don't have that. This is Aunt Jan, played by Mary Stuart Masterson. Her character is an antagonistic family member who wants custody of Abby, or who she calls a
Mentally ill child.
They write her to be a manipulative person who only cares about getting an income for having custody of Abby, but she comes off more as a Cruella type that feels like she belongs more in a Disney movie than a Blumhouse horror film.
And after what he did to that poor man, I just...
Mike knows that not having a job or a stable income is going to look bad on his part if he wants to keep custody of Abby, so he calls up our good friend Steve and takes up his offer for the security guard job. He gives Mike the job and tells him the history of the establishment and why he's even guarding the abandoned pizzeria in the first place.
So, I will catch you on the flip side.
Hopefully.
In case you couldn't tell, we as the viewer are not supposed to trust this guy. After falling asleep on the job and seeing his brother get kidnapped again in his dream, we now see that his dream includes 5 young children, all of whom start running in different directions as soon as Mike questions them. Mike wakes up after tripping on a rock, and somehow this equates to him falling off his chair while sleeping. Anyways, I'm sure that meant nothing. It's 6 a.m., which means Mike successfully got through his first night. Got to a place called Sparky's Diner, which is actually a reference to one of the first myths the game series had, in which players thought that there was a secret animatronic in the first game by the name of Sparky the Dog. I will admit, this is a very subtle reference that doesn't break immersion. It's something that the fans will get, and it doesn't interfere with the story. Speaking of breaking immersion, look everyone! It's Mad Pats, the famous guy from Game Theory, and look, his name tag says Ness! He says the famous line from his hit show, Game Theory!
Some people say that, but you know, it's just a theory.
He said it! He said it!
Anyways, we learned that the babysitter, Max, is working with Aunt Jan to help make sure that Mike does indeed lose custody of Abby, because she'll get paid in the process, and, you know, America. One of the things I wanted to mention that just threw me off from the movie was the choice of cinematography and how some shots have you taken the perspective of the person the character on screen is talking to, I don't know why they chose to do this, but it's really goofy, and it doesn't even work because it's having us switch point of views constantly. In one shot we're Aunt Jan, and in the next we're Max's brother. Oh yeah, Max has a brother. Don't know him? That's okay, he's not going to be alive any longer. Aunt Jan wants to try and find criminal evidence that would result in Mike losing custody of Abby. And here's what I don't get. It's implied that Jan's motive for wanting custody of Abby is for the monthly check she gets.
She doesn't even care about Abby. All she wants is the monthly check from the state.
But that check is meant to be used for assistance with providing for Abby's needs, so it's not like any of that money is going to be used for personal benefits. I don't understand this character at all. So the Disney villain squad come up with a plan to have Max's buddies wreck up the place and get Mike fired, all while Jan's lawyer is sitting next to her.
Is that guy okay?
I just realized I shouldn't be hearing any of this. As a matter of fact, I shouldn't be here at all.
Sit down, Doug.
Oh yeah, Jan's lawyer is a character in his movie. His name is Doug, and he easily steals the show.
Guess we're finished here, unless either one of you has a brilliant idea, which I realize is highly unlikely.
Why don't we just kill him?
Tempting, but no.
Anyways, it's night 2 at Mike's job, and we get to see his dream once again. Brother gets kidnapped, car drives off, Mike's sad. We see the kids again, and instead of Mike tripping on a rock, we get a cheap jump scare, because this movie was made in 2012. It's at this point I realize I'm only 30 minutes into the film. God, I'm gonna be here for a while. Mikey wakes up, and we are soon introduced to our third main character, Vanessa, played by Elizabeth Lale. Vanessa is a police officer who's on beat patrol. The pizzeria is a place she visits on her patrol, despite the fact it's an abandoned establishment. She helps treat a wound Mike somehow got while dreaming, and then tells him that he's probably gonna quit, implying that she knows more about the place than she's letting on. Vanessa decides to formally introduce Mike to the animatronic characters. And if there's one thing the film did a good job at, it was the animatronics. They're all so well made, and the department behind them did an amazing job at bringing these characters to life. The whole setting of the pizzeria is really well constructed, and it's clear that a lot of time, effort, and passion was put into making this place. It makes me wish that the entire film took place in a pizzeria like in the games. Regardless, I really like the animatronics, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't impressed by their presentation in the movie.
This is
the best thing you've seen in your entire life.
Vanessa, how old are you? After some really awkward flirting, we learned that the place was shut down because of the disappearance of 5 kids, something that wasn't disclosed to Mike before starting his job. Vanessa decides to joke with Mike, saying that he doesn't have his badge on him, so he gets him one from the prize counter. Man, I never knew that kids went missing here. This is something that concerns me greatly. I'm really uncomfortable. Yeah, I know, right? Hey, you want some Tootsie Rolls?
Some friendly advice. Don't let this place get to you.
Don't let this place get to you. Vanessa, you just told him that this place is a crime scene. As the night ends and the morning begins, we see Aunt Jan's goon looking on as he and Team Umizoomi are planning to vandalize the pizzeria in the hopes that it'll get Mike fired. After they smash up the place, we learn that the animatronics are coming alive, and they begin to attack the vandals. The first stooge dies from Chica sending her cupcake to attack him. He dies off screen. The second stooge dies after Bonnie does what Mike did to that dad in the mall and beating him to death. He dies off screen. And the third stooge dies from Foxy in what is probably the most underwhelming jump scare in the whole movie. He dies off screen. The babysitter, whose name I forgot, checked inside to see what was taking so long, so she sees a child run by, and it's implied that this child is a ghost of one of the kids who went missing. But at this point in the movie, we have no idea if the missing kids are actually dead. For all we know, this could just be some random kid that lives here. Look, times are tough in this timeline. The housing market is going to crash in 8 years, so he might as well find some place to live. Naturally, Evanescence follows the kid, like any character in a horror movie would. No, I'm not making that joke. I think one of my biggest issues with this scene, aside from the abysmal acting, is the fact that the animatronics are incredibly underutilized and don't actually do anything on screen. You have these big animatronics that most definitely had a ton of money and effort put into them, but with the scenes they are in, all they do is just stand around and glare at the camera. Chica never attacks anybody and instead uses the cupcake, because I guess it's easier for them to do that in CGI instead of using CGI with the animatronics. Bonnie kills the BI off screen and we don't actually see anything he does, most likely to maintain a PG-13 rating, or because it would be too difficult to show any of the action from the robots. I understand if they thought it would have been a waste of time and money to include stuff like this, but when you're making a horror movie, your goal is to scare the viewers and entertain them at the same time. This entire scene fails to do any of this because of these reasons that I've already listed. There's no actual fear factor or suspense, because the entire time all this is happening, all you're being shown is just a door. Now you may be asking, but that would have taken too long to actually CG animate the animatronics in this scene. And normally I would agree with that, but I can't give this movie the benefit of the doubt in that regard because it took 8 years for this movie to actually be in theaters. It should be obvious to everyone that taking too long is not a big concern of Blumhouse. The reason why they're such a successful movie studio is because they're always putting low amounts of money into projects in order to maximize their profits. Their business strategy is based off of quantity, not quality. And the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is not excluded from this business strategy. Anyway, we return home and get more of the Abby is weird for drawing storyline before we're interrupted by our friendly neighborhood policewoman, Vanessa. She informs Mike that there was a break-in at Freddy's, and instead of filing a report and getting a search done on the place, she instead puts blame on Mike and accuses him of being too doped up to remember to lock up before leaving. What's her evidence for this? A bottle of prescription medication that's meant to help Mike sleep. Yeah, man, I just get so high off of melatonin.
Newsflash, if you're too whacked out to remember to lock a friggin' door, accident or not, you're liable. It's called criminal negligence.
See, I get that Vanessa is a police officer, and it's basically her job to assume that anybody taking medication is using illegal substances, but I don't understand how this is supposed to connect to negligence when he can literally see him lock up the place before leaving. The two decide to take a walk, and we get this scene that I actually really liked. Mike opens up to Vanessa about his childhood trauma and how he saw his own brother get kidnapped in front of him. He talks about how he never truly appreciated the time he had with his family until they were all gone, and that looking back at it now, he wishes he could see them again, even if it's just for a short amount of time.
Every night we would sit down together, we'd have family dinner, and we'd hold hands and say grace. And yeah, at the time I thought it was really cheesy, but then it's gone.
I love this. This is probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. Watching Mike open up about his trauma and appreciate the little things he had with his family is really bittersweet. It does a much better job at fleshing out Mike's character compared to his scenes in the first hour of the movie. I wish we got more scenes similar to this, or at least more character out of Mike, because he is an incredibly underdeveloped character who just doesn't get enough time to progress. After Mike trauma dumps to Vanessa, she does the most reasonable thing possible and throws his prescribed medication into the river. Like, okay, I get it, you don't want him to sleep on the job. That I understand. But I'm pretty damn sure he needs that medication. Like, even if he's abusing it, I don't think you want the security guard suffering from withdrawal after basically forcing him to go cold turkey.
Hey, it's Max. Leave a message.
Yeah, so obviously Max isn't picking up the phone, mostly because I don't think she's physically able to anymore. So Mike thinks it's a great idea to take Abby to the place he knows was just broken into the night before and have her sleep in his office. I think I'm starting to see why Aunt Jan says that Mike isn't a responsible guardian. Anyways, night 3 begins, and Abby decides to wander off the minute Mike falls asleep. Wait a minute, Mike's asleep? That means we have to see his dream again! The same dream we have already seen 3 times before! Look, I get that these dream sequences are crucial to Mike's character arc, but there's only so many times that you can see the same scene of Mike watching his brother get kidnapped and then question ghost children before you just don't care anymore. Mike wakes up and finds Abby with animatronics. Under the impression that they are hurting her, Mike gets ready to do what he does best and beat the hell out of innocent people.
I'm killing you. I'm killing you.
Okay, that's the last time I'm gonna bring that up. As it turns out, the animatronics are haunted by the children who went missing in the pizzeria, but instead of them being vengeful spirits who are thirsty for blood like they are in the games, instead they are innocent children who watch Cocomelon and Skibbity toilet videos all day. After this revelation, Mike's shift ends and him and Abby drive back home. Once Abby gets tucked into bed, Mike looks at the drawings on her desks and notices that she's been drawing herself with the kids who went missing at the pizzeria. You can tell it's the missing kids because the camera has to do close-ups on the features that the animatronics have. See, we as an audience would never know otherwise. Thanks, Mike. I had no idea. As it turns out, the haunted animatronics are Abby's friends, which is why she was getting along so well with them last night. I don't know whether to feel sad or embarrassed at the fact that Abby is so lonely that her only friends are literal ghosts. Mike is still bothered by Abby's drawings because one of them is Mike's brother Garrett being kidnapped, exactly like what he saw in his dreams. Abby says that one of the ghost children, specifically the one possessing Freddy, told her about this event. So now we can put child character with a sixth sense in our list of horror movie cliches that this film has. All that Abby knows about who took Garrett is that it may or may not be someone in a yellow rabbit suit. So Mike, seemingly desperate for answers, decides it's a good idea to bring Abby back to the pizzeria so that she can get more answers from the missing kids. Night 4 comes around and we are greeted to Vanessa, staring at the wall of drawings that kids from the pizzeria have made. .5 on IMDb. Mike and Abby head inside, and Abby is excited to see her friends again. And it looks like Vanessa knew that the animatronics were haunted by children the entire time, and decided to never tell Mike, despite the fact he was shown to have a visible wound from the animatronics when he first met her, and that she already told Mike about the missing children to begin with. If at any point she was under the impression that Mike's life would be in danger, then why on earth would she not tell Mike everything that she knows? For crying out loud, Vanessa found Mike with a massive gash in his arm, and she was more concerned about accusing Mike of being a junkie on the job than she was about his own safety. We're about an hour into this movie, and I still haven't been given a good enough reason to like Vanessa. Alright, now this next scene is probably the most infamous scene in the entire movie. It's something a lot of people point to when criticizing it, and I'm sorry to say that I will be no different. Abby rushes over to Vanessa and Mike and asks them for help with building a fort for her friends. Her friends being 10-foot-tall robots who are possessed by children who died in the 80s. Yeah, this is a great idea. Mike is obviously against this idea, as he should be, but Vanessa decides, yeah, why not? Let's play with these deadly robots. Keep in mind, she is aware that these are dangerous robots. We then get a montage of them building a fort out of furniture while a generic pop rock song plays, complete with animatronic shenanigans and corny humor. I just want to remind people that 4 guys were brutally murdered in this building by the same animatronic, and their bodies are most likely still here while this montage goes on. The scene serves no purpose and instead kills any suspense of horror that this movie had built up to this point. A common counter-argument to criticism of the scene is that because the animatronics are haunted by children, it would make sense for them to act like children. But the issue is that when you have supernatural characters in horror movies that are meant to, strike fear in the viewers, the last thing you want to do is make them not scary. Some of the most established horror movies that have adolescent villains don't make them act like kids because it removes any fear the viewer would have over the character, because the viewer would just go, oh, look at that, it's just a dumbass kid. If the children in those movies were like building pillow forts or playing patty cake or some other playground game, nobody would find those movies scary. And I believe that's where the Five Nights at Freddy's movie falters in that regard. You can't take them seriously as children because we just saw them brutally murder 4 people 30 minutes ago. And you can't take them seriously as killer robots because you have these Disney Channel movie moments that just kill any sort of fear we may have for them. Now, you'll probably say, the villain of the movie isn't the animatronics, it's the killer. And I think it's possible for a movie to have more than one villain. As for the killer, we'll get to him later. But the promotion leading up to this movie, whether it was posters or trailers, always promoted the animatronics as being the main fear factor. When the original games were popular, nobody was jumping in their seats going, oh my god, the killer!
Purple guy!
They were jumping in their seats going, oh my god, Freddy Fazbear! Now, I want to ask you something. If this scene was removed from the movie, what would change? We already know that the animatronics are haunted by children. We know this very well already, just by looking at Mike's dreams and Abby's drawings. So why do we need this scene? Why? We get more Vanessa knows more than she's letting on dialogue, and it's becoming a lot more obvious that Mike's reasoning for bringing Abby back to the pizzeria is ludicrous at best.
My dreams are more vivid, and it's like I can almost...
Change what happened?
Mike? Michael. Mikey. Garrett is dead. Nothing will bring him back. This idea of revenge somehow being the solution to Mike's issues is exactly why the writing for these characters falls so flat. It's hard for me to feel any sort of connections for these people when their motivations are so outrageously stupid. Putting Abby, your only living non-extended family member, in danger just so you can learn the truth about something that happened 20 years ago is ridiculous. Hey, where is Abby, by the way?
Abby, don't!
Abby gets knocked out because of a guitar riff that she makes Bonnie play on his guitar. Yeah, I don't get it either. Understandably, Vanessa is upset at Mike, going so far as to threaten to kill him if he brought Abby back to the pizzeria.
You can do whatever you want with your own life, but if you ever bring Abby back here again, I will shoot you.
I mean, you could arrest him for child endangerment, but I guess threatening him works too. Well, now that we have a conflict between the two main characters, I can't tell if we're in the third act yet. Maybe another character conflict will remind him. Oh hey, it's the third act! Yeah, so it looks like Guardian of the Year Mike Schmidt decided it was a good idea to hand custody over to Aunt Jane, which, looking at what Mike has done during the past hour, I feel like Aunt Jane would be a much better person. This is something that upsets Abby so much that she does the unthinkable, scribbling out Mike's face in all the drawings she made with him in it. Mike storms off, picks up his medication, and heads back to work, thus beginning night 5. Mike falls asleep on the job again, and that means we get to see the same dream as many other times before. However, this time it's different. If only I cared enough for it to matter. We see current day Mike looking at his dead family as they ask him to join them for burgers.
Cheeseburgers.
Mike is clearly confused by this, and we learn that the missing kids orchestrated this dream for him. How, you may ask? Don't ask questions. They tell Mike he can have this version of his dream every night in which his family is alive in exchange for Abby.
You can have this dream every night. We can be together with him again. You said we could have anything we wanted? We want Abby.
Mike accepts these conditions because apparently he hates his sister and values his dead brother more. So much so that he would prefer to see him in his dreams every night instead of seeing his currently alive sister every day in real life. You can argue that his decision was influenced by the ghosts in his dream, but even he was able to recognize that none of this is real.
This isn't real.
So, just to make sure we're on the same page, Mike has chosen to sacrifice his sister, who is currently alive, so that he can have a dream in which his dead brother is alive every night. Garrett is not being brought back to life. All that happens is that Mike gets to see him in his dreams. You with me? Mike realizes how stupid of a decision that is and immediately wants to back out of it. But it's too late. The ghosts are gone and the deal is set in stone. Mike starts screaming for them not to hurt his sister. The ghost children then start to attack Mike. Wait, why are they attacking Mike? They just made a deal with him so that he could have his dream every night. Unless they meant it as in, you can see your brother in death. Man, not only are these ghost children ruthless killers, they're also master con artists. After some juicy PG-13 violence, Mike wakes up in the same saw trap that the guard at the beginning of the movie died to. I still don't understand why the pizzeria has this to begin with. Since Mike has plot armor, he escapes the trap and learns about the fate of the Power Rangers who broke into the building a couple nights ago. Apparently the smell of decaying bodies wasn't a red flag for Vanessa or Mike when they entered the building again. Maybe these ghost children just stock up on a lot of air fresheners, I don't know. Cut back to home where Abby is doing what I do every day. Staying inside the bedroom and drawing, as well as ignoring family members. Aunt Jan clearly doesn't care, so she decides to sit down and watch the Gilmore Girls or something. I don't know, what do old women watch these days?
Yeah. You wanna play with your Mario game? I had a big one.
Check it out, I'm in the house like carpet. And if there's too many heads in my blunt...
Unbeknownst to her, Freddy made his way inside the home. Abby hears him outside and is overjoyed to see her best friend, and oh, Aunt Jan is dead.
Silly Aunt Jane. She fell asleep.
Well, this won't look good on Mike's custody case. Freddy and Abby take a taxi to the pizzeria, a taxi with what appears to be the strongest suspension support I've ever seen. Also, the car is driven by a YouTuber.
I'm taking my whole outfit off.
At least with Corey, the fan service isn't hammered in as MatPat's appearance was. He's just kinda there. As they drive off, we cut back to Mike, where he's being patched up by Vanessa. Mike explains that the animatronics tried to kill him, and of course Vanessa knew about this. But apparently she also knew about the 4 other people that died as well. So, let me get this straight. Not only did Vanessa know about the danger of the animatronics, but she also knew about the 4 doofuses that got killed as well. So she was aware that those 4 were killed during the break-in, and instead of informing Mike about that when she first told him about the break-in, she decided to keep it a secret and get upset over Mike's normal pills instead. When she saw Mike bring Abby to the pizzeria, instead of telling Mike, yo, 4 people are dead in this building, get Abby the hell out of here, she decides to make a pillow fort with her. At what point am I supposed to believe that she is any better than Mike for putting Abby in danger? At least with Mike, he wasn't aware about the fact that dead people were in the back of the restaurant rotting. So what's her reason for not telling him?
They weren't innocent.
You know, call me crazy, but I don't think people who broke into an abandoned pizzeria and smashed up the place deserve to be brutally murdered for their crimes. Even if they did deserve it, that's still something you should tell the guy who is working as a night guard there about. And so, an hour and a half into the movie, Vanessa finally spills the beans about what she knows. Take notes, everybody, this is going to be on the test. The missing kids were never found. The missing kids are stuffed inside the animatronics. The killer influences the robots to hurt people. The killer is named William Afton. William Afton is Vanessa's father. William Afton killed Garrett. Cool? Cool. After Mike gears up with tasers and cattle prods, he goes after the animatronics in order to save his sister. After taking out most of them, Mike stops to let Abby know how much he cares about her, letting her know that she is the most important thing in the world to him.
You are the most important thing in the world to me, and I promise you I'm gonna do better.
Abby, I swear I didn't make a deal with ghost children to have you killed. I would never do such a thing. Mike and Abby split up after he almost dies from a cupcake chewing his leg. And eventually, we are met with the main reason this movie sold so many tickets. William Afton. Complete in his moldy yellow bunny fursuit that he hasn't taken out of the Dashcon ball pit since 2014.
This is perfect. First I killed your brother, now I kill you. Symmetry, my friend.
Go to hell.
Apparently Mike has the same weight as a cotton ball. So William Afton is the one who kidnapped Garrett and killed him. And I'm going to be completely honest here, this plot twist sucks. We know that Afton murdered the 5 children and stuffed them in the animatronics, but how and why did he kill Garrett? Mike and his family was out in the middle of the woods when Garrett was kidnapped. It's not a very ideal place if you're going to kidnap a kid. So how is this supposed to work? Was he just out driving in the middle of Nebraska and saw the opportunity? Was this a personal attack on his family? Like, either way you try to make heads or tails of it, it's all a massive stretch. That's another problem the movie faces. It's willing to give the killer a face, but never actually build on him or his crimes. More on this later, but just keep in mind that this person is supposed to be the mastermind behind all of this. After some of the corniest dialogue I have ever heard from a villain, Vanessa steps in to stop her father from killing Mike.
We're all for temper tantrums, aren't we, Vanessa?
I'm not kidding, Dad.
Yep, the killer is Mike's job counselor from the beginning of the movie. Who could have seen that coming? Literally everyone. See, one of the big issues with this twist villain is that Blumhouse already announced that Matthew Lillard would be playing as William Afton well over a year before the film's actual release. So when we saw that Lillard was playing the job counselor, we already knew that he was going to be the villain by the end of it. Why would you even bother making him a twist villain if the audience is going to see the job counselor and go, hey, isn't that actor supposed to play the villain? Like I was saying earlier, the plot twists behind William Afton either don't make sense, are underdeveloped, or completely pointless. But despite all of that, this is the villain the movie has been building towards for its entire runtime. An underdeveloped twist villain that surprises absolutely nobody. No motive for his crimes, no built-up storyline, just a villain who exists for the purpose of fulfilling fan service. Afton tries to call Vanessa's bluff, but is then shot by her.
Come on. We both know you're not.
He shakes it off because the suit is, you know, metal. And then we learn that for some reason, the drawings on the wall dictate the behavior of the animatronics, and they're obeying the command of Afton because of the drawing, which depicts the kids holding hands with the yellow rabbit. Aw. This is a rule that the movie just makes up towards the climax of the film, with literally no prior setup or indication of its existence. The only reason for it to exist is so that the movie can have a method of taking down the killer that doesn't involve shooting him in the damn head. I mean, it's fine though. I'm sure Vanessa can still try and shoot him up. No, okay, never mind. Afton tries to stop Abby, but it's already too late, and she put up her recent drawing, now turning the animatronics against him. You know what would make this moment even more epic? A corny one-liner, but this movie could never.
They can see you now.
Oh, they did it! Certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, 100%. 10 out of 10 flawless Best Picture 2023. After Afton realizes that his fate is sealed, he decides to exit the movie by giving the worst acting performance in this entire film.
Look at you. Look at the nasty things that you have become. Look how small you are. How worthless you are. You are wretched, rotten little beast.
Chica then launches her cupcake at Afton because, once again, the animatronics barely get to do anything in the movie except walk and look pretty. The attack from the cupcake causes Afton to have a spring lock failure. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, spring locks are a thing in this movie. I didn't mention them before because it doesn't serve an actual purpose in it, except for this scene. All you need to know about them is that they're discontinued machinery used for animatronics to separate the animatronic parts from the suits. If it fails, then the animatronic parts snap back into place. William ends up having a very unrealistic death from the spring lock failure, and he decides to put on the mask one last time before saying,
I always come back.
This is a line that is iconic with the William Afton in the game series.
I always come back.
However, the use of the line in the games refer to him still being alive after multiple pizzerias burned down with him inside it. It's become sort of an inside joke that William Afton will never die because without him, the game series cannot continue. It makes sense for him to say in the games because he keeps coming back from death. In the movie, however, this is probably his first time dying, so the only reason why he would say this is so the audience can go, oh, he said the line! He said the line from the games! Now, the reason why I say probably about him dying is because, just like in the games, the movie series cannot exist if the main villain is dead. Regardless, Afton dies, and Mike and Abby grab a most likely dead Vanessa and escape the pizzeria as it collapses. For some reason. We get an epilogue showing the events that took place after the fiasco with the pizzeria. Aunt Jan is still dead, and even though it looks very suspicious that the person you were currently in a court case against died, and clearly died due to foul play, Mike is doing just fine. And so is Abby, who can finally socialize with people. I wonder how Vanessa is doing after all of this. Coma. Yeah, Vanessa is in a coma, and Mike drops by to visit her. How nice of him to visit a person who threatened to kill him, threw his medication in a river, lied to him about the death of Garrett, didn't hesitate to put Abby in danger, lied to him about the dead bodies in the pizzeria. Wait, why is he visiting her again?
Can we visit them sometime?
You know what? You never know what can happen.
So it looks like things are doing okay for Mike and Abby. Their aunt is dead, Mike is supposedly without a job again, but at least Abby is making friends. And really, isn't that what it's all about? It's not about the journey, it's about the friends you make along the way. They're what makes this movie, and what makes this adventure. I'm recording this after realizing that this part of my script was written in crayon, which probably means it wasn't written by me. Yeah, the ending to this movie sucks. It's really anticlimactic, and all it really does is just leave a bunch of questions unanswered so that it can tease to the fans about a sequel, which is obviously coming because this movie made bank for Blumhouse. Afton is still alive, Vanessa is in a coma. There's no way this movie is not getting a sequel. Well, it's like he says.
These days, you gotta have a sequel.
The end. Question mark. I've spent a good portion of this video talking about the negatives of this movie. I now want to talk about some of the positives because, despite my criticisms, this movie is not hot garbage. The actress who played Abby, Piper Rubio, did a great job with what she was given. She gave it her all, and I think she's one of the better child actors I've seen in quite a while. It's obvious that she had a lot of fun working with the film. The animatronics, like I said earlier, are phenomenal, and honestly the best part of the movie. I wish they used them more instead of treating them like props. A lot of design and attention was put into these characters, and I think that's worth appreciating. The fan service, while overwhelming at some points, had some decent references that don't spoil the experience, like Sparky's Diner or Cory Kenshin, and the inclusion of the living tombstone for the song that plays at the credits is great. The setting of the pizzeria is really cool to see. It has just the right amount of uncanniness and familiarity that makes it perfect for a horror movie. Despite all of these positives, it still isn't enough to outweigh the negatives with this film. The main villain, William Afton, is barely in the movie, and if you aren't already familiar with the lore of the games, then it's going to be very hard to actually care about him as an antagonist, considering he doesn't have enough screen time. Even then, Matthew Lillard was just not as good as I thought he was going to be in this movie. I don't know what it was, but the little scenes he did have had some of the poorest acting in the entire movie. Don't get me wrong, I love Lillard. He has some great examples of just how convincing his acting can be, but he was just not it in this movie. Whether that's from poor direction or just Lillard himself being past his prime, I don't know. A lot of people were making fun of the casting for Afton because of the fact that Lillard played Shaggy in the live-action Scooby-Doo. At first, I thought it was a little unfair considering Lillard has proven himself to be a competent actor when it comes to playing a psychopath, like in the original Scream. Lillard is definitely capable of playing a psycho role. I don't know if he's only good at playing characters that move and act like Looney Tunes characters or what, but he has something. It's a real shame that he was incredibly underwhelming as Afton, but I feel like it could have been better if he had more scenes in the movie where Lillard can prove his ability to play a psycho. Instead, all we get is a scene of him in the office at the beginning of the movie, and then the final showdown. This lack of screen time just reflects more about how badly handled Afton was as a villain, rather than Lillard's acting ability. Another complaint I have about the film is that it's trying to do too many things at one time. I would have much preferred if the entire movie took place in the pizzeria with the night guard staying in his office fighting off the animatronics, like in the game. But that's boring to have it take place in only one location, you may be saying. And if that's the case, then I believe you need to watch more horror movies. Some of the best horror movies that I have ever seen are ones that take advantage of a claustrophobic environment to intensify the horror. Movies like Saw, Cube, and The Platform use this tactic brilliantly. And with a franchise like FNAF, where the entire game has the night guard in one room for the duration of it, it's a masterpiece waiting to happen. The movie could have had him, like, stuck in the pizzeria for 5 nights, trying to fend off of these animatronics all while he's in his office space. And then we as the audience get the closure of watching him leave after finishing that week. There was a lot of potential that the movie had, but instead of getting a genuine horror experience, we have a half-baked family drama story with killer animatronics thrown in. It's sad. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie underdelivered in every way possible. One of the main reasons that the quality of the film upsets me so much is because people have been waiting for this movie for 8 years. It's a movie that has been hyped up for so long that I remember hearing about it while I was in elementary school. My FNAF phase is done and over with, and even though I have no intentions of ever entering that fandom again, I'm happy I was able to see a film that I never thought would come out. But at the same time, I'm just as, if not even more, unhappy with what the movie ended up being. FNAF fans have been waiting for almost an entire decade for this movie. They deserve a product that's exceptional, and while yes, there are plenty of fans who enjoyed this movie, there's also plenty of fans who didn't. And judging by how much of a success this movie was in the box office, I don't think Blumhouse is going to do anything different with the sequel. It's going to end up being just as bad as the first movie. But that won't stop them from doing anything different because the money is going to come in regardless. That's how Blumhouse has always worked, and that's how they're going to continue to work. I want to end this with saying that if you watched the movie and you genuinely enjoyed it, I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you were able to watch the movie and get an experience out of it that I wish I could have gotten. All the things I say about this movie in my video are simply my opinion. Just because I say it and just because I believe these things about the movie does not mean you have to believe it either. There could be lots of stuff that you loved about the movie that I didn't, and there could be stuff I loved about the movie that you didn't. At the end of the day, everybody has their own taste in movies. Not everybody is going to be the same in the way they consume movies and how they analyze them. I like that people are able to discuss about movies, whether they enjoy it or don't. I think just discussions about film and media in general is really, really nice. If I have to end this off with anything that I can say to you, don't be an asshole.